Hello there and welcome back to the channel. Today we're coming back to The Police, one of my favorite bands ever, and we are actually going to be hitting one of my favorite albums ever. In this case, we're going to be listening to Synchronicity Part 2 from the album, of course, Synchronicity, which, if I recall correctly, is the last album by The Police. This track is fantastic, it's very good, it's extremely well orchestrated. The production of this album is also fantastic. This is a very, very great listening experience. So I recommend you to blast this bad boy by on its entirety once this review is over, because you'll see there are many things that once I explain it to you, you might be interested on actually listening to the whole thing once this is over. Okay? So with that being said, let's get into it. But before we go, if this is your first time on the channel, I welcome you, because in here we analyze the music that we love from the perspective of an active musician and professional music producer, but using language that everybody can understand in a way to expand our knowledge when it comes to music production, songwriting, and of course, music appreciation. So, if this is your jam, let's rock and roll. Here we go. So here we go, Synchronicity Part 2 by The Police. Sorry for interrupting, but you know the drill. This track begins with such a bang, because it's full of emotion but also kinda impactful, right? The use of synthesizers at the beginning, creating this kinda weird, kinda outlandish, and somehow a space-like sounding soundscape introduces into this fantastic world of power and energy, don't you think? Because the track itself, if I have to describe it with one word, would be energetic. It's super, super dynamic, has plenty of punch, but we're talking about The Police. This is not a metal band or a hard hitting rock band. They're a very good rock band, don't get me wrong, but their sound is not necessarily speaking one that evokes this kind of aggression, right? And still, this track has plenty of energy that kind of puts you to the back of your seat, don't you think? Super awesome. Now, the beginning, as I said before, has plenty of synthesizers playing alongside the rest of the instruments, because it's not only just the introduction. If you paid attention, and I was trying to draw your attention to that particular aspect of the mix, is the fact that the bass, played by Sting, of course, has plenty of support coming from a synthesizer. I was even trying to draw your attention to this guy. I don't know what kind of synth they used, because this album, well, it's a very high end production, I gotta say. Sounds amazing. The entire thing is beautifully produced, and the orchestration is quite vast. There are plenty of instruments used across the entirety of the album, and in this track, you're gonna see more synths used across the spectrum. And please remind me the name of the guitar player, because for whatever reason I always forget his name, and he's fantastic. And his guitar tone, I happen to be one of this guitar tone happens to be one of my favorite guitar tones ever in rock history, for real. And look at that, I can't remember the name of the guy. And I can assure you that as soon as I read the name, once you drop it on the comment section down below, I will instantly recognize it. Yeah, but his guitar tone has plenty of effects, but it's not in your face. I don't know exactly how many pedals he used in this one, but one effect that is very, very common in his playing is a chorus and flanger. Those are modulation effects. They could sound similar depending on how you set them up. So I'm going to explain them to you. For those of you who are not guitar players or musicians per se, a chorus effect does creates a kind of a copy of the sound that comes in, and then creates a slightly detuned version of it and mix it back with the original sound. And that detuning creates this kind of wishy-washy effect that you can hear right now in my voice. As you can see, my voice got this kind of modulated, moving element to it, and that's because the effect is engaged. In contrast, something like a flanger, for example, does something similar, but it's trying to recreate the delayed sound of a tape machine while it's mixed back to the effect or to the original sound. Right now, I'm applying flanger to the sound of my voice, and you see that there is some form of thing going on. That's the effect of, or it's the sound of the tape machine kind of being delayed. Okay, both of them are very important for his sound, and in this track you can hear it, especially when he does the big chords, similar to what the Who used to do back in the day. Those, that's where you will be able to hear those effects on a much more clearer fashion. Now, the tone of the bass, excellent as usual, right? Sting has a very good tone, and the bass is usually super fun to listen to, especially to play it as well if you want to play the cover. Great fun. And Steve Copeland, I remember the name of the drummer. Fantastic. He's always delivering the best performance possible. So I want to pay attention now to the use of effects on the drum kit because there is something going on with it. It has a particular tone to it, and I don't know how much the tone is coming out of the effects used on it or actually the room in which the drum kit was recorded. What to look for? Tell me once, or try to define the sound of the drum kit using using terms like this. Is it inside of a big room or inside of an apartment? Okay. And once I come back to you and we discuss the mix, I will explain why do I mean what do I mean by that. Okay. Let's continue. Here we go. Sorry for interrupting. You know the drill once again, and I think I stopped it right at the very point in which it's going to get better. But well, let's analyze the mix, and then I let you listen to the final section of the track. But one thing, the voice, Sting's voice, it's super rough, and I said it in the best possible way because in this one he's singing in a very aggressive fashion. not necessarily speaking one or a style that is usually used by him that often. And probably is one of the reasons why I like this track so much, because in this one he's actually doing something a bit more on the evil sounding version, right? This is evil singing. But well, let's analyze the mix. Let's take a look at the stream first. Over here we got Decibel, which is the tool that we use to analyze music through the use of a visual medium, of course. And this tool is divided into sections. We got here the first section, which is the frequency range analyzer. And I know that for those of you who have been following the channel for a while, you know what this is. But for those of you who happen to be new, let me explain. And here we got the loudest point of each of the frequencies that are part of the human hearing range, which stands for 20 all the way down to 20,000 hertz. And this white line represents how loud each of those frequencies were at their highest point. And look at this, plenty of bass. This album has plenty of, for lack of a term, and excuse the French, but kind of balls. It's very ballsy. It's kind of punchy sounding. It's extremely energetic, as I said before, and it has plenty of robustness, for a lack of a better term. And you can see it here. The low end in this album is actually very controlled. It's not overhyped, but it's very present. And you can see that it's basically as loud as the rest. But something that is kind of impressive is that the mid range as well, this section here, which is the low mids and a little bit of the mid highs, it's quite loud. Almost as loud as, if not louder than the low end. But you see this incredible slop. This slop represents the high end. And this is what, for those of you who happen to be audiophiles, this is what could be used, or this is the visual representation of what some of you refer to as a warm sounding record. This record doesn't have that much of a shrieky or shouty mid range or a loud high end. And in my opinion, that's one of the best sounds we can produce as music producers or mixers, because it creates this kind of smooth silky tone, but still retaining the energy and not making it dull. None of you agree with me. And I know that I used all sorts of weird esoteric terminology, but describing music with words is kind of difficult. But in this case, we got this beautiful sounding record in which the effect itself, or sorry, the equalization of the entire record is done in a way that pushes most of the energy of the band, which is carried, and let's face it, by the bass and the drums. And don't get me wrong, once again, I happen to be a huge fan of the guitar tone of this guy. Please remember my name once again. But his job or his role in the band is mostly, or I see it, and let's have this conversation here. The way I see the guitar work for the Police is like a sound designing standpoint rather than a musician, if that makes sense to you, because he's a great orchestrator. The way that he creates those chords and the progressions, and even especially when he goes for those arpeggiated moments, arpeggios, he does it in a very symphonic way and adds plenty of how can I put it? It adds more meat to the bones of the music, if that makes sense, because it makes everything feel much more uh, complete, for a lack of a better term. And harmonically speaking, he always delivers. And of course, by doing so, he's very busy adding that layer of content or harmonic content to the music that he's not usually being at the forefront of the band. He's usually staying for or the voice or the drums. And once again, the Police is such a good band. It's one of those rare examples in which you got three talented musicians creating fantastic music. And yes, I happen to be a big fan of the band, but for obvious reasons, they are fantastic. Now, let's take a look at the second section of the analyzer. This is the dynamic range analyzer, sorry. And in here we can see how loud the track has been throughout time. Important because, of course, depending on how loud a signal is, we as human beings, we're gonna react differently to it. When something is quiet, it's much more intimate, much more closer to us, and a little bit scarier or sexy. When something's louder, it's much more exciting. It's fun. It attracts attention, and it's also, of course, a little bit of powerful. Okay. The difference between both, while a song explains, sorry, uh, is exactly what creates this delivery of emotions throughout the song, throughout time, right? When a song is quiet, as we can see at the beginning, and don't tell me that well, don't you think that the introduction to the track is very kind of intriguing? Like, the hell is going on? and it ramps up little by little, little by little, just for us to be slammed by the wall of sound that is the whole band playing together. This is exactly what I mean. Thanks to the use of the dynamic range, we can get that impactful introduction. Very cool. Now, you'll see the track, even though it's kind of balls to the wall for the entirety of the song, very impactful, very energetic. We got moments on which the song drops, just as in here, and also see how the track itself kind of sets itself in cruise mode, for lack of a better term, for it to ramp up during the chorus. This is clearly the first chorus, and here we got the reintroduction of the second verse, and see what happens over here. Once again, the second verse is as loud as almost as loud as the first chorus, but see the incredible amount of volume we get here. This is the introduction of the chorus, I think, clearly, for the second verse to follow. This song is kind of cyclical. It's very not repetitive because it actually keeps adding layers and layers and layers of music. The thing is that you can see the clear sections of the track, which are very rich in content, and the way that they reintroduce them and keep the song from feeling dull, or avoiding the song from feeling dull, is by the use of the dynamic range, as you can see. Super important. And I happen to be someone who puts a lot of emphasis on these kind of situations because that's what brings life to music. And speaking of life, could you decide which way to describe the sound of the drums? They sound big, right? They sound super big. And I think that they were recorded, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were recorded in a very big studio because the sound of the drums feels like it's inside of a very, very big room that creates this kind of sound. But at the same time, of course, there are plenty of mixing techniques at play that allowed for the development of the sound. It's natural sounding, yes, but it's how can I put it? Like enhanced reality, if that makes sense to you, because it has a little bit of compression, well, a copious amount of compression, and compression is an effect that is difficult for me to show you here. Why? Because it's very subtle. But what you do with a compressor, you actually take control over the dynamics of the instrument that you're or the signal that you're sending through the compressor, and the high points in volume will be squashed in a chord of what you tell the compressor to squash them in volume. So it's going to lower the volume of those while bringing up the quieter parts. This, when applied to a drum kit, creates a much more punchier sounding effect, and almost like think of John Bonham, for example, from Led Zeppelin. That kind of gigantic sound. Also, we got reverb, which in this case I can show you. Reverb is basically the tool that allows to recreate the sound of a space through artificial methods, and it sounds like this. Reverb, yes. So you can see that they probably used a mix of the effects I mentioned plus the sound of the room. I don't know the details, but if you happen to know them, please share them with us in the comment section down below. Now let's finish off the track, and well, we will give our final comments once this is over. Here we go.
Many miles away, there's a shadow on the door of a cottage on the shore of a dark Scottish lake. Many miles away, many miles
That's kind of perfect.
many miles many miles many miles
Fantastic outro, right? It went to a kind of flamenco like chord progression that added this sense of mystery because the song, even though feels that it's concluded, feels like the opening to something bigger. It's the introduction to something else. If I recall correctly, the next song in the album is of course Every Breath You Take. I think. Let me check because I might be saying something very dumb. But let's take a look over here at the screen. Look at that. It is. Somebody actually happens to have listened to this album way more times than somebody has should have. So, yes, it's Every Breath You Take, and actually it paves the way beautifully for the song to be presented to us. Synchronicity happens to be a fantastic example of why we should keep producing albums, not just releasing singles, because the entirety of the songs that are part of this body of work create a narrative that makes total sense and it's coherent with each other. It's something that little by little have gone out of fashion, but we should bring it back because the entire experience changes dramatically when you listen to the songs as they were meant to be heard or listened to, one following another in a particular order. Because the police, I can assure you, put a lot of effort on first picking the tracks that will become synchronicity, and secondly, organizing them in a coherent way. It truly changes the sound and even the feeling and the emotional reaction that you will have to the songs, even though you have heard them several times, such as is the case of Every Breath You Take, which I will analyze later on in this channel, of course. But in my book, Every Breath You Take without synchronicity wouldn't be as good as it is. Believe me. Listen to the album, and you will see once that song, which I know you have heard several times and you might be up to here with it, feels. And you'll see that you will find a much more better appreciation for it thanks to Synchronicity Part 2. Now, with that being said, thank you for joining, thank you for watching, and if you want to support this channel, the best way to do it is by subscribing, leaving a like, and of course, leaving a comment. And please remind me the name of the guitar player once again because I suck at that. Believe me, I am very bad with names. And also, if you happen to know any details regarding the production of the album, of course, please feel free to share them with everybody in the comment section as well, because I happen to be a sucker for these things. So, thanks for joining, thanks for watching, and as every single time that I meet you, I gotta remind you that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about, and remember that I will see you when I see you.